3 days before the long weekend, the Department of Labor called me. We got anonymous complaints saying, "Your company is forcing employees to go on a holiday retreat." I went still. Then I checked social media. Yep, there it was. An intern who'd started a month ago had shoved me onto the local trending page. Greedy boss turns holiday weekend into mandatory company retreat. Employees are basically free entertainment. They say it's optional. Yeah, right? Who's brave enough to say no? Thousands of comments rolled in absolutely roasting me. Except our retreats had always been elite, fully paid, no cheap corporate nonsense. This time I was paying out of pocket. 7 days in the Maldives. Everything covered. A $2,000 travel stipend, each senior employees could bring family. But apparently a free luxury vacation was oppression. Now cool. I told the labor officer, we'll fully cooperate. Then I dropped a notice in the company group chat. Per Department of Labor guidance, the long weekend company retreat is canceled. Everyone should take the holiday off, as usual. The travel stipends and retreat budget will be moved into this quarter's employee benefits reserve. The second I hit send, something slammed into a desk outside my office. Corp was in its 6th year back then. 4 of us crammed into a rented house. 3 brutal years later, we finally built something real. I made one rule for myself. Every year, 50% of the company's net profit goes to employee benefits. Not free break room snacks. Sad little afternoon teas. Real money. Last fall, every employee got a $100 and $200 holiday bonus. And 3 extra pay days off. Last year, our company retreat was skydiving in New Zealand. $4,300 per person fully covered. The core team that had stuck with me from the start got more in annual benefits than they made in salary. And it paid off. Company culture was solid. Revenue doubled every year. Our turnover rate was low enough to make competitors cry. So this year I went bigger for the long weekend. 7 days in the Maldives, all expenses paid over water. Villas included a $2,000 stipend per person. Senior employees could bring family. Flights and hotel deposits have been paid 2 weeks ago. Then Sophie Rowe, an intern who joined last month, nuked everything with a 30-second video. Michelle, who'd been with Corp since day one, held her phone in front of me. Mr. Ty Lee. The comments past 50,000 flashed at the screen. Blood-sucking boss exploiting employees. A company retreat over a holiday weekend. Isn't that just forced OT? Employees have lives too. Report him. Insults flooded in. Every one of them dragged me by name. Sophie had tagged the video exposing workplace abuse and tearfully accused Corp of forcing employees into a holiday retreat. She made herself look like some brave hero, fighting corporate oppression. In 40 seconds, the video hit 3 million views. I stepped out of my office. The hallway was packed. Henry, who joined around the same time as Michelle, stood by the water dispenser, waving his phone and cursing with a few senior employees, seriously biting the hand that feeds her. She missed the New Zealand skydiving trip last year, but she had no problem taking a long weekend bonus. Zach from sales rubbed his hands together. So are we still going to the Maldives? My wife already took time off. Henry smacked the table going. The Department of Labor is already involved. Boss just sent the notice. It's canceled. The hallway blew up. That ungrateful traitor, Sophie. Does she even know what she just ruined? I said nothing. I turned and walked back into my office. Michelle followed. Voice low. Mr. Tiley, are you really not responding? The comments are getting uglier. No response. Pull the profit distribution records. Employee benefit acknowledgement forms from the past year. And the Maldives flight and hotel deposit receipts. Put everything together. Michelle froze. Department of Labor is coming to investigate. Let them see everything. I just sat back down when my phone buzzed again. Sophie had posted another video. In it, she faced the camera with red eyes and a trembling voice. Thank you all for your support. I'm just an ordinary worker. I don't want more people getting hurt by this toxic corporate culture. I set my phone aside and reached for my coffee. Cold. A loud bang echoed from outside. Someone had slammed a desk again. Shell lingered in the doorway. I looked up, pulled Sophie's on boarding file too. Sophie didn't show up. The next day, she called in sick. The doctor's note claimed. Acute gas went to write this from an outpatient visit. But when I opened social media, she was live streaming from her bedroom, with a virtual crown floating over her head, exposing workplace abuse. Guys, ever since I told the truth, the company's been targeting me. I'm honestly scared to even go to work today. No makeup, thin white t-shirt. She looked fragile enough to earn sympathy on sight. Livestream already had 28,000 viewers. Stay strong. We're with you. Virtual gifts flooded the screen. You guys don't get it. I'm just an intern. I only make $2,800 a month. But I don't regret speaking up. Workers shouldn't be treated like this. Right on cue, her voice cracked. She brushed at the corner of her eye. Perfect timing. I sent her a private message. Sophie, you've only been here a month. You don't know what our company retreats have been like. Stop now. There's still time to fix this. She read it. No reply. Half an hour later, I heard my exact message in her live stream. She held a screenshot of our chat up to the camera. Look at this. The capitalist himself is threatening me. What does stop now even mean? What does time to fix this mean? Isn't that intimidation? The comments exploded. This boss is disgusting. Get a lawyer. Save everything. This is evidence. The donation total jumped from $200 to $4,700. That afternoon, Michelle and Henry came to my office. Neither looked great. Henry rolled up his sleeves. Mr. Tiley, we can't keep staying quiet. The rumors are getting out of control. People are saying you took bribes now. Michelle nodded. Henry and I talked. Maybe we should post a statement on the company website. Show last year's City Top 10 Ethical Employer Award and a tax clearance certificate. After a beat, I agreed. The statement went up less than 2 hours later. Sophie smiled at the camera during her live stream. A small smile, the kind that practically dripped with pity. Guys, he pulled out some City Top 10 Ethical Employer Award. You know, awards like that can be bought for a few $1,000s, right? Who knows what kind of deals happen behind the scenes? The comments flipped instantly. Yep, sounds guilty. Someone should investigate that award. He's innocent. Why is he trying so hard to defend himself? Michelle sat across from me, gripping a pen so tightly her hand shook. I've never seen anyone this shameless. I closed the live stream. Henry stepped closer and lowered his voice. Mr. Tiley, she's prepared. Those lines are way too polished. A fresh out of college intern. Shouldn't know how to steer a public opinion like this. I'd already reached the same conclusion. I just hadn't moved yet. No point spooking her too soon. Let her keep going for another couple of days. This doesn't end here. Michelle still looked worried, but seeing I wasn't rattled, she didn't argue. I opened Sophie's onboarding form. From her first day, under emergency contact, she hadn't listed a parent or relative. The name was Ryan Peck, relationship friend. Ryan had been in sales for 4 years, long enough to know exactly how the game worked. He'd gone on the New Zealand skydiving trip last year, collected last year's holiday bonus, and never once missed out on a company perk. I took a screenshot of Sophie's onboarding form and sent it to Michelle. Check Ryan's system log and records for the past 3 days. By day 3, the backlash had spiraled completely out of control. At 9 that morning, my phone rang. Larry Cole, our biggest client for the past 3 years. There was no small talk. Mr. Tiley, I'll be straight with you. Our company has a partner risk monitoring system. Your company is all over the trending feed right now. We're putting next quarter's procurement contract on hold. We'll revisit it after things settle down. This isn't just my decision. The board is watching. The line went dead. The office suddenly felt a lot quieter. $8 million, 40% of next quarter's revenue. Thrown in a limbo by a 40-second video from an intern. I tightened my grip on the phone. My chest felt heavy. Before I could process it, Michelle rushed into my office. Mr. Tyler, Ryan's stirring things up. I looked up. Honestly, it wasn't surprising. He's holding a little meeting in the break room with some of the newer hires. I walked past and heard him saying, "You went too far this time. That Sophie is fighting alone, and everyone should stand together and support her." She paused, and he sounded weirdly protective of her. I leaned back without saying anything. I knew Ryan, smooth, friendly, never stepped on anyone's toes. Company retreats, he was always the first to pour drinks, and the fastest to jump into the middle of group photos. Whenever benefits were handed out, his name was always near the front of the line. And now he was suddenly positioning himself as a victim and publicly backing Sophie. There was definitely something underneath all this. Michelle handed me her tablet. There's more. I checked Ryan's login records. Back-end data filled the screen. Over the last 3 days, Ryan's account had repeatedly accessed the client management system. After hours, most of the logins happened between 11 at night and 1 in the morning. What did he export? Michelle's jaw tightened. Our 3 most sensitive pricing files. Biggest clients, lowest rates. Every off-record offer we've ever made. She swallowed. Any competitor with that information could undercut us and steal every one of those accounts. I stared at the data, and suddenly everything clicked. Sophie wasn't the mastermind. She was the distraction. Ryan was the one pulling the strings. Use an inexperienced intern as cover. Trigger a public scandal. Keep everyone focused on social media. While he walked off with client data. Where's he planning to land? Michelle pressed her lips together. I had someone look into it. Last month, he had dinner twice with the sales director from Harrison Trade, our biggest competitor. I nodded. Photos. Michelle pulled out her phone. Ryan posted them himself. Caption was "Old friends catching up." She zoomed in, but the guy across from him was wearing a Harrison Trade jacket. I stared at the screen for several seconds. Is he here today? Yeah. When I came over, he was sitting at his desk watching Sophie's live stream. He was smiling. I pulled up the security feed. Ryan sat at his workstation, with his phone propped sideways on the desk. His thumb kept flicking upward. The live stream screen wasn't clear, but for a split second, the display refreshed. That was enough. He was sending gifts in Sophie's live stream, not from his main account, burner account, with a blank profile picture and a string of random characters. But the recharge history and payment account, still LED straight back to him. Michelle stared at the footage. Her voice came out sharp. That snake. He spent 4 years taking everything this company offered, and now he's stealing from us while helping stab us in the back. I stood up. Notify everyone. 3 p.m. tomorrow in conference room. All staff, no exceptions. Sophie included. Michelle hesitated. Will she come? I shut off the surveillance feed. A faint smile touched my lips. Oh, she'd come. She'd come because her entire online brand depended on the next act of her self-constructed tragedy. When you build a house of cards on the shifting sands of internet outrage, you can't afford to let the wind die down. You have to keep blowing. Michelle, I said, leaning back in my leather chair, the leather squeaking softly in the quiet office. Draft a formal administrative summons. Send it to Sophie's work email and copy her personal one. Use the standard HR template for a disciplinary hearing, but make sure to include the phrase, potential resolution of employment status. Send it now. Michelle's brow furrowed, her pen hovering over her notepad. If we send that, won't she just post it online? She'll claim we're trying to silence her. It'll feed right in her narrative. That's exactly what I want her to do, I replied. She thinks she's a martyr. If she thinks she's walking into an ambush, she'll bring her shield, which, in her case, is her audience. She'll come to that meeting with her phone hotwired to her live stream. She won't be able to resist the urge to broadcast my downfall in real time. Michelle's eyes cleared as the realization hit her. A slow, determined nod replaced her anxiety. And Ryan? Leave Ryan alone. Let him think he's the invisible puppet master. If he thinks we're focused entirely on Sophie, he'll keep his guard down. He'll think he's home free with those client files. Understood, Michelle said. She turned on her heel and left, her steps brisk and purposeful. I looked out my window. The city skyline was beginning to blur as dusk crept in, painting the glass in shades of bruised purple and slate gray. 6 years. 6 years of 80-hour work weeks, of sleeping on office couches, of eating cold takeout while staring at spreadsheets until my eyes bled. We had built Varen Corp from a 4-man operation in a drafty rented house with a leaky roof into a mid-sized powerhouse. I had made a promise to myself when we finally crossed the threshold into profitability. The people who helped me build this bridge would never have to worry about crossing the river. 50% of our net profits went straight back to the staff. It wasn't a marketing gimmick. It was the foundation of our culture. Last year's skydiving trip in New Zealand had cost me a fortune, but seeing the pure, unadulterated joy on Henry's face as he landed, or Michelle laughing over local wine, that was the dividend. And now, a 22-year-old intern who had barely finished her onboarding modules was dismantling it all for 30 seconds of digital dopamine and a handful of virtual crowns. My phone buzzed on the desk. It was an email notification. From Sophie Rowe to Austin Tiley. Subject, administrative summons, October 24th, 3 p.m. I will be there. I'm not afraid of the truth. I didn't reply. I simply closed the laptop, grabbed my coat, and walked out. The next morning, the office atmosphere was thick enough to cut with a knife. The usual morning chatter, the clinking of coffee mugs, the casual debates over sports or weekend plans, was entirely absent. Instead, there was only the low, rhythmic hum of the HVAC system and the sharp, aggressive clicking of keyboards. At 10 a.m., the glass doors of our lobby slid open. Investigator Marcus Vance from the Department of Labor was exactly what I expected. A man in his late 50s with tired, heavy-lidded eyes, wearing a gray suit that had seen better days and carrying a scuffed leather briefcase that looked older than my company. Michelle escorted him into my office. Mr. Tiley, Vance said, his voice a dry, gravelly baritone as he extended a hand. I'm Marcus Vance. I believe your office was notified of my visit. Mr. Vance, I said, shaking his hand firmly. Thank you for coming. Please have a seat. Vance sat down, placing his heavy briefcase on his knees, popping the brass latches with a double clack that sounded like a starter pistol. He pulled out a thick yellow folder. I'll be candid, Mr. Tiley. We receive thousands of complaints a year, most of them anonymous, most of them easily dismissed. But when a complaint is backed by a viral video with millions of views and 50,000 comments alleging forced labor on a holiday weekend, we have to act quickly. Public pressure tends to expedite our timeline. Understand completely, I said. You have a job to do, and I want to make sure you have everything you need to do it. I slid a thick, professionally bound leather folder across the desk toward him. Vance raised an eyebrow. What's this? Those are the financial and operational records of Varen Corp for the last 3 years, I said calmly. Inside, you'll find our annual profit-sharing distribution reports, certified by our external auditors. You'll see that 50% of our net profits are distributed directly to employee benefits, bonuses, and wellness programs. You'll also find a complete itinerary, receipts, and voluntary consent forms for last year's retreat to New Zealand. Vance began flipping through the pages. The cynical, routine expression on his face slowly began to crack. He paused on a page, his finger tracing a line item. You spent $4,300 per person on a skydiving trip? Fully covered. Yes, I said. And if you flip to tab 4, you'll find the booking details for this year's Maldives retreat. 7 days, overwater villas, fully paid. Tab 5 contains the travel stipend authorization, $2,000 per employee to cover incidental expenses or to bring family members. Tab 6 contains the signed acknowledgement and voluntary participation forms from every single employee. Vance stopped flipping. He looked up, his eyes narrowing slightly. Every employee? Except one, I said. Sophie Rowe. She was hired 4 weeks ago as a marketing intern. She was not eligible for the Maldives trip, yet under our standard 90-day probationary policy. However, we had actually drafted a waiver to include her as a gesture of goodwill. She had not yet received the invite when she posted the video. Vance stared at me for a long, quiet moment. He leaned back in his chair, the old leather groaning under his weight. Mr. Tiley, in my 25 years at the Department of Labor, I have investigated hundreds of businesses. Usually, I'm dealing with employers who try to shave 15 minutes off a time card or classifying full-time staff as independent contractors to dodge taxes. He tapped the folder. I have never seen a benefit structure like this. If these documents are authentic, and I will verify them with your bank and auditors, you aren't violating labor laws. You're running a golden cage that most workers would beg to get into. They are fully authentic, Mr. Vance, I said, and I invite you to stay. In fact, I'm holding an all-staff meeting at 3 o'clock today in our main conference room to discuss this very issue. I would highly appreciate it if you sat in the back and observed. Vance looked at his watch, then back at me. A faint, almost imperceptible smile touched the corner of his mouth. I think I'll do that, Mr. Tiley. I'd very much like to see how this ends. By 2:45 p.m., the conference room was packed. Varen Corp only had 28 full-time employees, but with everyone squeezed into the central meeting space, the room felt stifling. The long oak table, a piece of furniture we bought secondhand when we first moved out of the rented house, was surrounded by chairs, and the remaining staff stood against the glass walls. I stood at the head of the table. To my right sat Michelle, her laptop open, her face a mask of professional neutrality. Behind her, in the corner of the room, sat Investigator Vance, blending into the shadows in his drab gray suit, a notebook open on his knee. The staff whispered in low, anxious tones. Henry was leaning against the back wall, his arms crossed over his chest, his eyes fixed on the empty chair near the front. Zach from sales was fidgeting with a pen, looking nervously at the ceiling. At exactly 2:58 p.m., the door opened. Sophie Rowe walked in. She had clearly spent time preparing her look. She wore no makeup, making her skin look pale and slightly translucent under the harsh fluorescent lights. She wore an oversized, faded gray sweater that swallowed her small frame, making her look incredibly young, vulnerable, and out of place. But it was her hands that caught my attention. She was holding her phone at chest level, her thumb hovering over the screen. Right behind her was Ryan Peck. Ryan was smiling, that easy, effortless sales guy smile that had won over a dozen of clients. He had his hand lightly on Sophie's shoulder, a gesture that was ostensibly protective but felt entirely theatrical. He looked around the room, nodding to a few of the newer hires, establishing himself as the mature, reasonable leader of the opposition. Thanks for coming, Sophie, I said, my voice calm, even, and entirely devoid of anger. Please take a seat. Sophie sat down at the center of the table. She placed her phone flat on the wood, the screen facing up. I could see the interface of a popular live streaming app. The red live icon was already flashing in the top corner. The viewer count was climbing rapidly, 5,000, 12,000, 20,000. She didn't try to hide it. In fact, she leaned slightly forward, ensuring the phone's wide-angle lens captured both me and the rest of the room. Mr. Tiley, Sophie said, her voice trembling slightly, though her eyes were steady. I hope you don't mind that I'm broadcasting this. After the threats I received in my private messages, I felt I needed a record of this meeting for my own safety. The public deserves to see how Varen Corp treats workers who speak up. A few of the senior employees shifted uncomfortably. Henry let out a low, derisive snort, but stopped when Michelle gave him a sharp look. That's perfectly fine, Sophie, I said, gesturing toward the phone. In fact, I prefer everything we say here today to be fully transparent. There's no need for secrets. I turned my gaze to Ryan, who had taken a seat 2 chairs down from her. Ryan, I'm glad you're here too. As one of our senior sales executives, your perspective is always valuable. Ryan gave a smooth, practiced shrug. Just here to support colleague, Austin. We all want what's best for the company, but we also have to protect our rights. The culture here, well, Some of us feel it's gotten a bit coercive lately. Coercive. I repeated the word, letting it hang in the air for a moment. That's an interesting word, Ryan. Let's look into that. I tapped the remote on the table, and a massive projector screen behind me hummed to life. Before we address the social media situation, I said, looking at the entire room, I want to share some news. Our primary client, Larry Cole, called me yesterday. Due to the public backlash and the trending videos, his board has put our $8 million procurement contract on hold. That contract represents approximately 40% of our projected revenue for the next fiscal year. A collective gasp went through the room. The newer hires looked at each other in sheer panic. For a company of our size, losing 40% of our revenue meant layoffs. It meant the end of the bonuses, the end of the stability they had taken for granted. Wait, Zach from sales stammered. 8 million? Austin, if we lose that, what happens to the Q4 bonuses? We won't have any, I said simply. In fact, we will likely have to downsize our sales and operations departments by 30% to keep the lights on. I looked directly at Sophie. Her eyes widened slightly, a flicker of genuine panic crossing her face before she quickly masked it with defensive anger. She looked down at her phone, where the chat was scrolling at a blinding speed. Are you trying to blame me for this? Sophie said, her voice rising, pitching for the microphone. This is classic corporate gaslighting. You make a mistake, you exploit your workers, and then when someone has the courage to call you out, you threaten their jobs. You're trying to turn my co-workers against me. She looked around the room, expecting nods of agreement. But the mood in the room had shifted. The romantic notion of a heroic intern fighting corporate greed evaporated the moment the word layoffs was uttered. The senior employees, the ones who knew what it took to build this place, were staring at her with cold, hard eyes. No, Sophie, I said quietly. I'm not blaming you. You are an intern. You've been here for 28 days. You don't have access to our financial planning, you don't understand our client relationships, and clearly, you don't understand how our benefits are structured. I pressed the remote again. The screen changed to show a scanned document. It was a certified bank transfer receipt dated 2 weeks ago, showing a payment of $120,400 to the Jolie Maldives resort. Below, it was a spreadsheet listing every single employee's name, their assigned overwater villa, and a transaction confirmation for $2,000 direct deposit labeled travel stipend. This was the Maldives trip, I said, my voice echoing in the silent room. Every single detail was finalized and paid for out of pocket 2 weeks ago. Not from the company's operating budget, but from my personal draw. It was fully voluntary. The forms Michelle sent out clearly stated that anyone who wished to opt out would receive the $2,000 stipend regardless, no questions asked. I looked at the phone on the table. For those watching a live stream right now, you can see the receipts on the screen. There was no forced labor. There was no exploitation. It was a fully paid, luxury vacation meant to celebrate a year of hard work. Sophie, you weren't on this list because you hadn't completed your probationary period. But as Michelle can confirm, we were preparing a surprise invitation for you today. Sophie's mouth opened slightly, but no sound came out. She stared at the screen, her pale face turning a deep, embarrassed crimson. On her phone, the chat began to change. Wait, is this real? Overwater villas in the Maldives? He paid out of pocket? Are they hiring? Is this girl serious? She ruined a Maldives trip for everyone. But I continued, my voice dropping an octave. This meeting isn't actually about the Maldives. And it's not really about Sophie. I turned my eyes slowly toward Ryan Peck. Ryan's smile had vanished. His posture had gone rigid, his hands resting flat on the table. Austin, Ryan said, his voice losing its easy warmth, replaced by a sharp, defensive edge. If this is some kind of public shaming session for Sophie, I think we should take this offline. This isn't professional. I agree, Ryan. It's not professional, I said. What's truly unprofessional is corporate espionage. The room went dead silent. You could hear the faint, distant hum of traffic from the street below. What are you talking about? Ryan scoffed, though his chest was rising and falling rapidly. Are you losing your mind? Michelle, I said, please show the system logs. The projector screen flickered, replacing the Maldives receipts with a series of dense, technical logs. Over the past 3 days, I explained, pointing to the screen, while the entire office was distracted by the social media storm surrounding Sophie's videos, someone was busy in our back-end databases. Specifically, accessing our secure client management system. I pointed to a highlighted line of text. At 11:42 p.m. on Monday night, user account R_Peck logged into the server from an external IP address. Over the next 2 hours, this account exported 3 massive files: our master pricing index, our proprietary client discount matrix, and the custom contract proposals for our top 10 clients, including Larry Cole. That's a lie, Ryan said, standing up so fast his chair scraped loudly against the hardwood floor. I was working late. I'm in sales, Austin. I look at client files every day. That's my job. It is your job, Ryan, I said. But it's not your job to export them to a personal external drive. And it's certainly not your job to do it while in active negotiations with our direct competitor. I pressed the remote again. A photograph appeared on the screen. It was a high-resolution shot taken through a restaurant window. Ryan was sitting at a corner table, laughing, clinking glasses with a man in a sharp navy blazer. On the table between them was a thick manila folder. This is Julian Brooks, I said. He is the sales director at Harrison Trade, our biggest competitor. This photo was taken last week. But that's just a coincidence, right? Old friends catching up, as you wrote on your personal social media. Ryan's face had gone entirely gray. He opened his mouth to speak, but I didn't give him the chance. Let's look at the financial connection, I said, tapping the remote. A split screen appeared. On the left was a screenshot of Sophie's live stream from yesterday, showing a user named user_99824 sending a series of high-value virtual gifts, universes, and crowns, totaling nearly $3,000. On the right was a banking ledger. Our forensic IT team spent last night tracing the payment gateway for user_99824, I said. The burner account was registered to a temporary email address, but the credit card used to fund those virtual gifts belongs to a corporate card issued by Harrison Trade. The billing address matches their headquarters. I walked slowly down the side of the table, stopping just behind Sophie, who was sitting frozen, her eyes darting between me, Ryan, and her phone. Sophie, I said gently, placing a hand on the back of her chair. When you posted that first video, did you really do it because you felt oppressed? Or did someone suggest to you that it would be a great way to build your personal brand? Did someone tell you that Varencorp was toxic and that if you exposed us, you become an overnight sensation? Sophie slowly looked up at me, her eyes wide with terror. She didn't look at her phone anymore. The chat on her screen was a blur of condemnation, but she had entirely forgotten about her audience. I, she stammered, her voice cracking. Ryan told me that the company was going to fire me anyway because I wasn't fitting in. He said if I posted the video first, I'd be protected as a whistleblower. He said he'd help me monetize it. He did help you, I said, by using a Harrison Trade credit card to send you virtual gifts to make your stream look incredibly popular, driving it up the algorithm. He used you, Sophie. He needed a massive, blinding distraction. He needed me so focused on a public relations nightmare and a Department of Labor investigation that I wouldn't notice him walking out the back door with our entire client database. Ryan took a step back toward the door, his eyes darting around the room like a trapped animal. This is bullshit. You can't prove any of this. I'm leaving. You can leave, Ryan, I said, pointing to the back of the room. But before you do, I'd like to introduce you to Marcus Vance from the Department of Labor. Vance stood up from his chair in the corner. He didn't look tired anymore. He looked sharp, formidable, and entirely unimpressed. Mr. Peck, Vance said, his voice cutting through the room. As a federal investigator, I take a very dim view of individuals filing fraudulent labor complaints to cover up corporate espionage. My agency will be cooperating fully with the federal authorities regarding the theft of proprietary data under the Economic Espionage Act. I suggest you stay right where you are. Two men in dark suits, who had been waiting quietly in the reception area, stepped through the double glass doors of the conference room. They didn't need to say anything. The badges on their belts spoke for them. Ryan sank back in his chair, his head dropping into his hands. The silence in the room was absolute. I looked down at Sophie's phone. The viewer count had reached 45,000. The comments were a wall of text, but the sentiment had completely inverted. This is insane. It's a real-life corporate thriller. She was a pawn. The boss is a legend. Look at those receipts. Ryan is going to jail. Feel bad for the company. They got totally screwed. I reached down, took Sophie's phone from the table, and looked directly into the camera lens. To everyone watching, I said, my voice calm and steady. Varencorp has always been, and will always be, committed to its employees. We aren't perfect, but we try every day to build something real. The Maldives trip is back on, and we will continue to share 50% of our profits with the people who make this company great. Thank you for your time. I tapped the screen and ended the stream. The aftermath was quiet, but swift. Ryan Peck was escorted from the building in handcuffs, facing federal charges of trade, secret theft, and computer fraud. The forensic trail Michelle's team had uncovered was airtight. There was no way out for him. Sophie Rowe resigned that evening. She didn't post any more videos. Her accounts went dark, and the internet, with its notoriously short attention span, moved on to the next scandal within 48 hours. The next morning, I called Larry Cole. I didn't try to explain myself over the phone. Instead, I sent him the complete forensic IT report, the Department of Labor clearance, and the video of the conference room showdown. An hour later, my phone rang. Austin, Larry said, his voice rich with respect. I just finished watching the video. I have to admit, when I saw the trending feed yesterday, I thought you were done. But the way you handled that the digital forensics, the loyalty of your staff. It's the most impressive thing I've seen in 20 years of business. Thank you, Larry, I said, keeping my tone humble. I just wanted to protect my people. Well, you did more than that, Larry said. You showed me exactly what kind of partner Varencorp is. Harrison Trade tried to pitch us this morning using the data Ryan stole. I've already instructed our legal team to file a formal complaint against them. And as for our procurement contract, we're not just putting it back on the table. We're expanding it. We want Varencorp to handle our European logistics next quarter. It's a $12 million commitment. I took a deep breath, feeling the heavy weight that had rested on my shoulders for the past 4 days finally lift. We won't let you down, Larry. 3 weeks later, the sun was setting over the Indian Ocean, painting the sky in brilliant hues of gold, pink, and deep indigo. I sat on the wooden deck of an overwater villa, a glass of cold white wine in my hand. The water below was so clear I could see the shadows of reef sharks gliding gracefully through the shallows. From a neighboring villa, I could hear the sound of laughter. Henry was shouting something about a beach volleyball match, and Michelle's distinctive, bright laugh echoed across the water. Varencorp was in its 6th year, and we had just survived our greatest storm. But as I watched my team laughing under the tropical sky, I knew one thing for certain. We hadn't just built a company. We had built a fortress, and the foundation was unbreakable.